Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
Ooh, awesome. Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm super excited to get started. I know we've got some people streaming live, and I'm sure, and I appreciate you guys being on here as well. I will say this, my voice is a little bit raspy today. I'm losing my voice a little bit. So I've got my handy dandy vocal spray right here as well. I think, following a team meeting day like yesterday, where I'm talking a lot, I tend to kind of get a little bit of voice loss. So I just bear with me, and if you can't hear something, then don't hesitate to ask me to repeat something as well, right, guys? I'm really excited because I think the session or the piece that we're going to cover today is going to be really valuable. We've been working through the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. You guys know that as we've been talking through this, I've been talking about principles that are straight out of MREA, but I've also been talking about some of the principles that come from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent too, right? And some of the things that are gonna be or have already been re-released internally within the company that haven't necessarily been shared out to the public, because this book, as it stands, is over a decade old, right? And so, but this next section that we're gonna talk about, we've talked about a lot about mindset. We talked about the fundamentals. We talked about the myth understandings of the millionaire real estate agent. We talked about how to think like a millionaire real estate agent, right? How to think a million, because we know that that's that foundational piece. This next session is where we really start talking about the practicalities of being a millionaire real estate agent, right? Where we really start talking about the foundation of not just being a millionaire real estate agent, but being a successful real estate agent at any level of production. And so this is really important because this is the foundation of our entire business, right? And that's the 3 L's, right? The 3 L's of the millionaire real estate agent. Now, have you guys ever heard of something called the Pareto Principle? Anyone know the Pareto Principle, right? Or the 80-20 rule, right? Have you heard of the 80-20 rule? Yeah, so I see a couple head nods now. And when we talk about the Pareto Principle or the 80-20 rule, the idea is there was an economist named Vilfredo Pareto in 1906. And he did a study on a farmland in Italy, and he found that 80% of the farmland in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. And then he was a gardener. So we also noticed that 20% of the pea pods in his garden, right, 20% of the pea pods in his garden yielded 80% of the harvest, right? And so he started finding that this 80-20 principle occurred again and again in life. And what we find is this 80-20 principle, or the Pareto principle, says that 80% of our results will come from 20% of our activities, right? Of our activities. But it's also, Richard Koch also talked about this Pareto principle, and he said it's the idea that we get the greatest outcome for time and effort expended when we spend the most time on the most important 20%, right? It teaches us that the time and effort on that 20% really matters as it relates to the results that we want to achieve. And very often, the one thing talks about this as well, right? The one thing talks about how generally we have a to-do list. And sometimes we'll have a notepad and a piece of paper, and our to-do list gets very long, right? And on our to-do list, there might be things like, making your phone calls and following up. But there also might be things on there like going to pick up the dry cleaning, right? Making lunch, making dinner, all of those little things that come up in our lives, making a flyer, right? All of these little things. And what happens is that there are 20% of the activities on your to-do list are gonna achieve or help you achieve 80% of your results. And yet we get stuck on doing those activities that fall in the 80%, right? Meaning that the results that we could achieve, but we get 20% of the results, right? That we would have achieved otherwise. And so the goal here is that we focus in our business on the things that matter to producing us the best results within our business. Like everything else, real estate has its 20%. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is the 20% of the real estate agent, which is three things: leads, right? Leads, listings, leverage, right? Leads, listings, and leverage, which are what truly drive the results, right? 80% of the results in our business. So I want to know, there is nothing more important in real estate than having prospective buyers and sellers, right? You cannot be a real estate agent and have a real estate business and not have buyers and sellers. They are the lifeblood of the business, right? The leads are the lifeblood of the business. If you have no leads, you have no sales. You have no income, right? If there's no leads, there is nothing else in this business, right? So generating leads is that front part of it. And what tends to happen is that we pride ourselves in being in the real estate business. And a lot of times we have reluctance of lead generation because we feel, I want to have all the skills already, right? I want to have all the skills already to be able to move my business forward. And yet the number one most important piece is that we consistently generate leads. I'm going to tell you guys the secret of the real estate business, right? Is there is absolutely no way to know everything that could potentially happen within your real estate career by sitting in a classroom and just learning by the book, right? And I guarantee that every single person on this call and everyone that's watching from home, right, including some of the biggest top producers that we know, do not know or have not experienced everything that could ever happen in real estate, because we are dealing with something that is pre-owned, right? That is pre-owned, that is high value. And there are things that happen in every transaction that they are different, right? You find a sinkhole under a house. We've had an agent that had a sinkhole under the house when they did the inspection that was about the size of one of those big outdoor swimming pools, right? A sinkhole. And I mean around, I'm not even talking about in depth, right? And so he had to go learn a new way of dealing with that, right? We have to process evictions sometimes. Sometimes they're squatters. Sometimes we're dealing with a trust. Sometimes we're dealing with all these different things that come up in real estate transactions, issues with permits, COVID-19, right? COVID-19 is a new issue. There's none of us that said, hey, I knew everything about real estate and then COVID happened, right? And then COVID happened. We're like, oh, never mind. I don't know everything about real estate anymore, right? So there's always going to be new things that come up. And if we wait to try to figure out everything before we go out and generate leads, we are not in the real estate business, right? We are not in the real estate business, because the real estate business is the lead generation business. And you must embrace the fact that the number of qualified leads that you have will either drive your business, and they will determine the quality, the size of your business. The other thing that's really important here, and that I really want you guys to have an understanding of, especially as we're in this a little bit of a shifted market right now, right? In a prosperous market, there are many agents that rely on passive lead generators, things like casual referrals and luck, right? Things like casual referrals and luck. That's called lead receiving, right? That's lead receiving. That is not lead generating. So I want you to understand that when we talk about leads, right? When we talk about leads, you must understand the difference between actively lead generating and lead receiving, right? Actively lead generating and lead receiving. Lead receiving is I get a phone call and it's a referral, right? It's a referral. Lead receiving is I have a sign on a property and I get a sign call, right? That's lead receiving, but we're not actively taking a consistent, determined action to lead generate. Your business must be lead generation based. Lead generation based. Intentionally, also, the follow-up and the database, and we'll talk about that later as we work through this, is going to be a part of the follow-up plan once we've actively generated leads, right? Once we've actively generated leads, which increases the potential to receive leads, right? To receive leads. And yet we also need to make sure that that foundational piece is built in there of lead generating. I will note as well, there is a catch on lead generation. It cannot be turned on and off, right? It cannot be turned on and off. Some people that are very, very good lead generators, they make one mistake, right? They turn it off because they think they have more business than they can handle, right? All of a sudden, they have a ton of leads coming in. They've got a ton of business coming in. And so they turn off the lead generation so that they can go handle this, right? Servicing the business. And then what happens, that dries up and they forget that real estate is a cycle, a process. And so all of a sudden, people they're like, oh, I just closed this transaction, or I'm closing my transaction. I better start lead generating again, right? And now it's another 3 months until they close a transaction. That's why we have dips and valleys a lot of time for a lot of agents, is because they take their foot off the gas pedal of lead generation, right? We never take the foot off the gas pedal. In fact, when we have too many leads for our business to handle, now we gain additional choices around, do we want to hire help at that point? And now, because we have so many leads, we can cherry pick the best leverage, and we'll talk through that as well. So leads, the first and foremost of leads, listings, and leverage, the 3 L's of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. The second one, listings, right? Listings. Now, listings are the highest leverage, maximum earning opportunity that you have within your business. Here's the good news. We're going into a market that is going to drive listing business, right? That's part of what we've been talking about. But I want to explore a hypothetical situation because I want you to see the importance of listings, right? Imagine you're in a situation and someone says, hey, I want you to decide, we have a 500K house, and there's the seller and there's the buyer, but you can only work with one of them, right? You can work with one of them, but you can only work with one of them. Which would you choose? Right? Yeah, I see it already. The seller, right? The seller. If we're only able to work with one of them, which would you choose? If your first thought was not the seller, right, then you're missing opportunity on how important listings are to the business and how they give you back your time, right? Because somebody sells their home, they may also potentially need to buy a home, which can generate another transaction, right? You can lead generate to that home to go find another client, right? We know that for every listing, it gives us the opportunity to generate at least 2 additional transactions, right? At least 2 additional transactions from each listing. So let's talk about the virtues of seller listings. Seller listings mean marketing opportunities. It's an immediate marketing opportunity, right? You get to put your sign in the front yard and potentially directional signage as well. You get to market through direct mail and email. You get to advertise in the MLS and on various websites and on social media, right? In here it says, it's so funny, the book says newspapers. I know we don't do that much anymore, right? But now we have social media, right? So you get to advertise. You have more control of your time. You have more control of your time because you're not necessarily subject to a buyer saying, oh my gosh, I have to see homes this weekend. And now we need to spend half an hour on each home, right? And now and then plus drive time and whatever else is going on, and then they don't put an offer, there's too much competition on that one, and you're doing it again next weekend, right? So you get to maximize and control your time and your scheduling. It maximizes your per hour compensation. So if you're working less time for the same amount of pay, you've just increased your per hour compensation, right? You've increased your per hour compensation. Volume. A highly focused, highly leveraged real estate agent can work 15 to 25 seller listings per month and keep it up. The same agent would be hard pressed to work 7 or 8 buyers per month and continue to do so over a long amount of time, right? You're able to work a higher volume of listings than you would be able to work the same amount of buyers. You couldn't work the same amount of buyers in the same amount of time. You'd probably be able to handle maybe a third of the buyers that you could handle if you were working listings, right? So it gives you an opportunity for more transactions throughout. With seller listings, you are also on the front end of pricing, right? Meaning that you really, that translates to really understanding the market at a higher level, gaining an intimate understanding of pricing in the market, seeing if prices are going up, seeing if they're going down. And what do we know to be true is that if we're not getting traffic on our listing, how do we solve it? It's price. Price can solve everything, right? If there's no traffic, price, right? If there's traffic and there's no offers, price, right? Especially in a market like now where we're seeing 25 offers coming in on some properties, right? It's price. It's price. Now, the last virtue of seller listings, properly marketed seller listings bring you more business, right? Because it gives you multiple marketing opportunities. And we know that a one well-marketed listing should give you at minimum, one serious buyer, at minimum, right? And we also know that you can now market to other listings in that particular area and potentially gain more listings as well. So it's going to be really important that we look at that as our additional opportunity. I see in the comments, is a seller all day, harder to get but easier to get paid with sellers. Buyers are easier but harder to get paid on. So I'm going to note one piece there, right? Is that the truth, or is that a belief, right? Or is that a belief, right? Is when we say that. So it's a good point to bring up, right? Is that I wouldn't necessarily say that getting a seller is easier. What I would say is, because every form of lead generation works, is generally what ends up happening is that we're looking at lead receiving versus lead generating. And it is easier to lead receive buyers. We don't lead receive sellers as often. But generally in most networks, depending on your age as well, right? Depending on your age as well, your immediate sphere of influence is likely comprised of people that are first-time home buyers, right? The younger you start in real estate, more than likely your immediate network is first-time home buyers, might be individuals that have never owned a home before, right? And so if we're lead receiving referrals, then those referrals tend to be buyers. And so it feels easier. It creates a feeling that it's easier for us, right? When in reality, if you have absolutely no network, if you have absolutely no one around you, right? And you don't have that network and you're forced into lead generation and you have kind of the two that are available to you, it's not necessarily easier to take buyers or to take listings, right? Or harder to take one or the other. It becomes a choice of the skill set. The secondary part of that is that there might be more than one in a particular market right now. So for example, right now we know that NAR has already told us when we talked to Chief Economist Lawrence Yun that buyer pre-approval applications are extremely high, which means there are more buyers, so it feels easier. It doesn't mean that it is easier, right? But it feels easier because there's more of them, right? So just it's a mindset thing. We change the way we look at things, and the things that we look at change, right? It's perception. So what is the perception that you choose to have, right? Listings can be easy. Listings can create a ton of leverage, right? Which leads us to our third L, leverage, right? Leverage. The how, the who, the how, and the what of real estate, right? It's really interesting when we look at this, because when we focus on listings, and we know that listings can bring us a twofer, right? Listings give us the opportunity to find at least one serious buyer and potentially one additional listing, right? Then what we know is that then we have the ability to create leverage. Now, on page 104, and I'm going to say this piece is really, really important, guys, right? Because we think about leverage and we think about starting a team. And a lot of times what happens, I think we really need to look at the motivation behind why do we start teams, right? Why do we start teams? Are we starting the team, right? Are we starting the team because we have so much business that we would lose it if we don't have somebody on the team? Or are we starting a team because we don't want to work solo? Or are we starting a team because it feels like that should be the next step, right? Think Stephanie Vitaco, one of the highest producing agents in California. She was the top individual producer for Keller Williams for 2019 as a whole, right? Is a single agent who does over 100 transactions a year as a solo agent, right? With about 12 administrative assistants, right? With leverage, and yet she hasn't necessarily brought in additional agents within her business, right? Now, I'm not saying that's going to be everybody's capacity, because everybody wants different lifestyles, and that's absolutely valid. But when we look at a team, I'm going to read this from page 104. Until you have maxed out on what you can accomplish through focus on leads and listings, you should not be hiring another person. Why? Red light, green light, right? We talk about keeping our money accountable. You do it when you need it, right? You do it when you need it, because leverage answers three key questions in your business. Who is going to do it? People, right? How will they do it? Systems. What will they do it with? Tools and technology, right? Tools and technology. What happens is when we bring individuals into our sales business, right? When we bring our individuals into our sales business, we want to make sure, one, that the systems and the tools are in place so that we can plug our people in. Or if we as of ourselves are not a systems and a tools person, right? That we bring in the right talent to help us create those systems and implement the systems, or implement what already exists, right? Or implement what already exists from a systems perspective. So I'm going to note, the other thing that's going to be really important around this is the level of talent that we work with, right? Good versus great talent. Bad talent can harm your business. If you bring someone in and they're not great talent, right? They're bad talent, but you felt like, hey, I need to plug this hole in my business right now, so I have to bring somebody in. And they're not necessarily the right person for that particular role or for your business. Now all of a sudden we run into a roadblock, right? Because they can harm your business, right? They can harm your business. Now, if we look at great talent, what is great talent? Well, great talent often meets and exceeds our standards and expectations. Great talent has the capacity to grow in our business, right? To grow in our business. Great talent is plugged into the vision that we have for the business, right? Great talent is wants to build. And here's the thing. If you've only experienced bad talent, then don't too many people will settle for good, right? Too many people will settle for good. But once you've experienced great talent, when you've really experienced great talent, good just isn't enough, right? Good just isn't enough. Eventually, if they are talented enough, they will help you create and implement systems to run your business more efficiently and consistently, right? So I know we have people at all levels of the business on the call right now, from agents that are still getting started to agents that are running teams, right? But even so, at this, I want you to think about this even as it relates to some of the services that you work with, right? Because your team is also comprised of the services that you have around you. So do you have that great talent? I'm going to note, he shares a story, and he says, I believe one of the greatest realtors of our time is Ebby Halliday, who was in Dallas, Texas. Ebby's first assistant was named Mary Frances Burleson. And 30 years after he hired her, his first hire, 30 years after he hired her, she was the president of Ebby Halliday Realtors, right? That had over 25 offices in Dallas. She went from starting as his administrative assistant and growing into the president of the company, right? 30 years later, when you find the right person, and they plug into that vision and they have that leverage, those are the individuals that you stay in business and you build empires with. She had the vision with him when he was a solo agent as a first administrative assistant, and now was a president of a company with over 25 offices, right? That's empire builder. That's true talent. And so it's so important that we look at that. Only after you have great administrative talent who bring systems and tools, and they have helped you to grow your business to the point where you have more clients than you can handle, do you start bringing in salespeople, right? So just a piece to keep in mind on that is that we must have a vision and we must have the talent around that piece as well. I know that's a lot of info as we jump in, but that I want you guys to really look at that, because when we look at the triangle of the millionaire real estate agent, right, where we start with thinking $1 million and we start growing into $1 million, that system, that piece that's around the triangle is leads, listings, leverage. So I beg you to ask the question of yourself, am I actively generating leads? Am I generating enough leads so that they can service the goals that I have? Has the number of leads that I generate regularly changed because my business has grown, right? Has this changed because the environment has changed, right? COVID-19. Was I generating leads in one way and that needs to be adjusted now? Do I need to increase the number of leads that I generate to support the goals that I set because of things like COVID-19, right? Or am I focused on lead receiving? Am I focused on lead receiving? Do I have one system, right? Do I have one system available in place in my business that is meant to drive listings, right? On my GPS, our business plan, is there one source of listing leads and a system around that you've built into your business, right? And leverage. Do I have the right vendors around me, affiliates around me? Am I working with the right individuals to create leverage for me in my business? And if I do have a team, am I hiring great talent or am I bringing in good talent? Because I'm impatient to wait for great, right? So a couple of things to think on. Now, a lot of info this morning. I know there's still a lot of stuff on the calendar. Next week, we're going to talk about the 8 goal categories of the millionaire real estate agent. What we may do as well, guys, is I may loop in, because there's a lot of sections that we still have to cover in the book. And I know we also want to get through this. We may loop in where 2 of the sessions a week are millionaire real estate focused, so that we can cover 2 topics. So that'll probably start next week, and I'll keep you posted on that change. But for now, I want to make sure that you guys are reading. We're going to be looking at MREA goals right? MREA goals, page 107 to page 115, right? Page 107 to 115 for our next session. And then we're going to start talking about earning $1 million, right? How do we really earn $1 million? What are the models that we need to have in our business around earning $1 million? Page 119 to page 128. With that, you guys, I hope you have an amazing day, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.